My name is Elowen Hart. I am 71 years old, a retired librarian who once believed that order could quiet every storm. For most of my life, I survived by straightening shelves and swallowing words that wanted to rise. That evening, my daughter's voice reminded me how silence can still wound. The roast was still warm when she said it. Marielle sat across from me, her nails a perfect blush pink, her engagement ring catching the candlelight like a blade. Her fiancé, Kellen, leaned back with the satisfied calm of someone who thought control was charm. "The greatest gift you can give me for my wedding," Marielle said, slicing through her chicken as if it were nothing, "is staying away for a moment." The sound of the fork falling from my hand was louder than her voice. It clattered against the plate, rolled once, then stopped. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but my hands were steady. I had learned that trembling only gave cruel people rhythm. I didn't ask why. The answer had been growing between us for years in the way she corrected my speech at restaurants, in how she looked away when neighbors said I still lived alone, in how she spoke of family as if I were an old cousin who might embarrass her. The candle on the table flickered once. I folded my napkin carefully, aligning its corners. "Well," I said softly, "then you'll have a quiet day." Kellen's mouth twitched, half smirk, half triumph. Marielle stared at me as if expecting an outburst. Maybe tears. I gave her neither. I rose from the table, pushed in my chair, and walked to my bedroom at the end of the hallway. The house smelled faintly of rosemary and lemon, the scent I'd chosen for comfort. Now turned sharp, I opened my small cedar chest, the one my husband built before his heart gave out 20 years ago, and touched his watch. The metal was cool against my skin. The living room murmurs faded behind the door. I could still hear Marielle's laughter, light and practiced, filling the space I used to call home. Some silences weigh more than words ever could, and by morning, I already knew I would not stay. I spent the next morning in the quiet rhythm that used to comfort me, coffee cooling beside a stack of papers, my glasses sliding down my nose. The kitchen table was covered in folders, old envelopes, and the kind of yellowing receipts only I would keep. They began as practical things, tuition payments, grocery bills, electricity notes, but over the years they became my proof of devotion. Every month, every signature, was another way of keeping us afloat. I had once believed that a mother's record-keeping was her love made visible. One envelope was marked Marielle College Fund. Inside, I found the receipt for her first semester at the University of Vermont. I remembered standing at the bursar's office counter, the check trembling in my hand. I had sold my wedding ring that month. White gold, small diamond, worn thin at the edges to cover the difference. When the clerk handed me the stamped copy, I'd smiled as if I were paying for a victory, not a loss. I worked double shifts that year, shelving books at the library until midnight. I learned to stretch soup into 3 meals and stitched my own coat cuffs when the lining tore. The neighbors praised me for being strong. They didn't see how strength can turn into silence. The letters came later. Marielle's first job, her first apartment, then shorter notes written in a rush. They used to start with "Dear Mom." Eventually, just "Hi." I ran my fingers over her handwriting, slanted and confident, before setting them aside. At the bottom of the pile lay a printed email. The subject line read, "Wedding budget. Final draft." I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was an itemized spreadsheet: venue deposits, catering costs, flower orders. My name appeared only once, in a tiny note beside the word "Expenses, Mom, reimbursed." No mention under family invitations. I stared until the numbers blurred. The air felt heavy, as if the paper itself carried judgment. All those years of order, of lists and ledgers, of believing that love was measured by what you gave. Now, every record only proved how easily I could be erased. The restaurant in Rockport smelled of wine and polish, one of those places where the menus came without prices. I had dressed carefully. A pressed navy blouse and my mother's pearl earrings. Mariel arrived late, laughing too loudly, her hand on Kellen's arm. His parents were already seated, elegant in the way of people who'd never had to plan around bills. Kellen's mother, Evelyn, extended her hand. Elowen, it's so lovely to finally meet you. Mariel tells us you're retired from the library, I am? I said, smoothing my napkin. After 40 years, I thought it was time to let the younger ones alphabetize the world. Polite chuckles followed. Kellen's father signaled for another bottle of wine. Conversation drifted toward wedding details venues, seating charts, imported orchids. When the server stepped away, I leaned in slightly. If it helps, I could host the rehearsal dinner in my garden, I offered. It's shaded by maples. I can set up tables under the lights. It would save a little. Mariel cut me off with a quick laugh. We're not doing backyard weddings. Mother, the air at the table shifted. Kellen smiled faintly. Pleased. His mother tilted her head. How sweet of you to offer, she said. Voice warm, but eyes cool. That sounds cozy. I folded my hands together. It's only an idea. You'd be surprised how elegant simple things can be. Mariel sighed. Mom, please. This isn't one of your book club potlucks. We've got professionals for this. Evelyn's gaze softened into pity, the kind that lands heavier than scorn. Don't worry, dear. Every generation does things differently. I nodded, keeping my voice even. Apparently so. Kellen raised his glass. To modern traditions. They clinked. I didn't. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself. The hallway outside smelled faintly of lemon oil and perfume. From behind the door, I heard Mariel's voice light, rehearsed. She means well, but she's so outdated. Something in me settled then. A stillness, colder than anger. I adjusted my coat, left a few bills for my part of the meal, and stepped into the night air. I had never felt more invisible, nor more certain that I would not stay that way for long. By dawn, the house felt like a shell I'd already stepped out of. I moved quietly, careful not to disturb the walls that had overheard too much. On the bed lay an open suitcase, half filled with the life I could still carry papers from the safe box. 2 photo albums. My husband's watch. A wool coat for the chill that lingers along the Maine coast. I folded each thing slowly, the way I used to fold Mariel's dresses before she grew too grown up for my help. The note took longer than the packing. I wrote it 3 times before it felt right. I won't ruin your day. Take care. Just 10 words. Neat handwriting, no accusation. I placed it on the kitchen table beside the salt shaker. Mavis knocked, just as the sun began brushing gold over the harbor. You're really going through with it, she asked. Voice low. I'm only doing what she asked, I said, handing her my house key. She studied me a long moment, then nodded. You always were better at quiet exits than loud fights. I gave a small smile. Loud fights never suited me. The streets of Camden were still empty when I walked toward the docks. The smell of seaweed, mixed with the faint sweetness of coffee from the harbor cafe. I'd already arranged to rent the small room above it, a narrow bed, a window that looked out toward the water, enough space to breathe. Before unpacking, I opened my laptop. My hands didn't tremble this time. I emailed the florist, the caterer, and the photographer. I thanked them for their patience and informed them that I was withdrawing as financial guarantor on all of Mariel's wedding contracts. Every word polite. Final. Irreversible. When I finished, I looked out the window. The fishing boats rocked gently in the morning light. The harbor silver and still. Somewhere across town, my daughter was probably waking to a life without me in it. For the first time in years, that thought didn't hollow me out. It steadied me. The morning of Marielle's wedding began with the kind of stillness I used to pray for. The harbor below my window was wrapped in mist, the gulls silent for once. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, half-read pages of a novel resting on my lap. The steam rose, then thinned to nothing. I didn't dress for the occasion. I didn't even look at the clock. Somewhere across town, there would be flowers, a photographer, a bride, though none of it included me. I had told myself I'd feel peace. Instead, I just felt blank. The knock came hard enough to rattle the glass. Mavis pushed the door open before I could answer. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright. "Elowen, have you heard? I set my cup down. Heard what? The wedding's a disaster," she said, almost whispering, as if gossip could still shame us both. The venue locked them out. Said the final payment never came through. I blinked once. Kellen didn't pay. Apparently, his bank froze his account, something about flagged transfers. The dress shop wouldn't release the gown without the balance either. Marielle showed up in a robe, for heaven's sake. I kept my voice even. And the guests? Half went home. The rest are standing in the parking lot waiting for refunds. Someone posted a video already, Camden's buzzing. I looked toward the sea. The mist was starting to lift. Soft ribbons of light breaking through. They told me not to come, I said quietly. I obeyed. Mavis sank into the chair across from me. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not." We sat for a while, listening to the distant bells from a church across the bay. I imagined the sound was meant for another couple, another day. "Do you feel sorry for her?" Mavis asked. I thought about the girl who used to curl beside me on stormy nights, afraid of thunder, trusting I'd keep her safe. Then about the woman who'd looked me in the eye and called my love an inconvenience. "I feel something," I said, but I wouldn't call it sorrow. When Mavis left, I walked down to the pier. The tide was coming in slow, deliberate, pulling the seaweed toward the shore. Somewhere behind me, the chaos continued. But the water steady, certain did not care. The first voicemail came just after sunset. I was folding laundry, the hum of the cafe below drifting through the floorboards. When my phone lit up with Marielle's name, I let it ring until it stopped, then pressed play when the silence felt heavy enough to hold. Her voice cracked through the speaker. "Mom, please, they're blaming me. The venue says the contract was my responsibility. Kellen's parents are furious. I don't know what to do. I need help. Please call me back." The message ended with a sob that sounded more like frustration than heartbreak. A second voicemail followed minutes later, this one from Evelyn Reeves, Kellen's mother. Her tone was clipped, every syllable polished to wound. "Mrs. Hart, I hope you're satisfied. Your withdrawal created unnecessary confusion. If you had handled things properly, none of this would have happened. You've humiliated your daughter and our family." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, listening to the click that ended the message. Then I pressed replay. Once. Only once. When the sound faded, I deleted both. For years. That kind of call would have sent me running, checkbook in hand, voice trembling with apologies that weren't mine to make. I had spent decades stitching peace out of other people's messes, believing that silence equaled love. Now, sitting alone above a cafe that smelled faintly of sugar and salt air, I finally understood the difference between peace and obedience. I turned the phone face down, breathed in through my nose, and whispered into the quiet, "You told me my gift was leaving." I gave it. The words didn't taste bitter. They were clean, like water after too much smoke. I washed the last of the dishes, set the towel over the sink, and turned out the light. The harbor was black outside, its rhythm steady against the dock. For the first time in years, I climbed into bed without rehearsing tomorrow's forgiveness. The sheets felt cool, the pillow soft beneath my cheek. Sleep came easily, like something finally returned that had been waiting its turn. I went back to the library 2 weeks after the wedding collapsed. The same old desk lamp flickered above the circulation counter, and the scent of paper and dust felt like home. Mrs. Connery, the new director, looked startled when she saw me. "Elowen Hart," she said, smiling. "We've missed your orderliness. I thought I might be useful again," I said. "Maybe volunteer a few hours." That turned into more. On Tuesdays, I started something small, a paperwork hour, a quiet corner for widows and retirees who needed help sorting letters, understanding pension forms, or reading fine print they could no longer see. They came with grocery bags full of envelopes and left lighter, not just in burden, but in breath. One morning, a man lingered by the door after the group had gone. "You're the woman from the paper," he said, holding a copy of the Camden Herald. "They wrote about your sessions." I looked at him, uncertain. He smiled, gentle and unhurried. "Jonas Blythe. I make wooden boxes. Thought you might use a few to keep your papers organized." He set down 3 small boxes. Smooth cedar, brass hinges polished bright. "No charge," he added. "I just like seeing order take shape." "They're beautiful," I said quietly. He shrugged. "Peaceful work suits peaceful people." Mavis stopped by that afternoon with a basket of muffins. She caught me wiping down the boxes. "You're glowing again," she said, amused. "I'm busy," I replied. "Busy looks good on you." We laughed, and the sound didn't hurt. That evening, I walked back to my small room above the cafe. The sky was lavender, the harbor calm. For the first time in months, I noticed how still the world could be when no one was shouting over it. I thought about the porch lamp I'd left behind at my old house, how it flickered on windy nights. I decided I'd buy a new one soon, not to replace it, but to start fresh. The thought felt steady, like the first quiet step of a long road I'd finally chosen for myself. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday, wedged between the electricity bill and a seed catalog. My name was written in Marielle's hand, careful, controlled, the way she used to practice her signature when she was 12. I sat at my small kitchen table and traced the ink before opening it. Inside, her words ran long but shallow. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot. I was under pressure. Everything fell apart so fast. I never meant what I said that night. Kellen's family twisted things, and I panicked. I hope you can understand. Maybe one day we can talk." There was no apology that belonged to her alone, just fragments of excuses wearing softer clothes. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and set it aside. The paper didn't make me shake this time. It simply felt distant, like a photograph from a life that no longer fit its frame. That evening, I pulled out a single sheet of my own stationery. I didn't overthink it. I wrote slowly, each word measured and calm. Some lessons can't be borrowed, only lived. I wish you peace. No signature flourish. No return address. I sealed the envelope, the glue tasting faintly of salt. The next morning, I walked it to the post office. The clerk, a boy young enough to call me ma'am, took it with a polite nod. As I stepped outside, Jonas was there, carrying a bundle of wood under his arm. "Running errands?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. He nodded toward the envelope in my hand. "Wood splits easier when you stop forcing the grain. People do too." I smiled. "You and your metaphors." "Occupational hazard," he grinned, shifting the wood. "Coffee." We walked to the cafe together, the air crisp, the world unhurried. Inside, he spoke about sanding techniques and the patience it takes to shape cedar until it stops resisting. I listened, grateful for the quiet rhythm of his voice. When I left later, the letter was already on its way, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone at all. By spring, the town felt smaller, softer. My name started showing up in small ways on a library bulletin, then in a letter from the Camden Council. They were launching a program for seniors and widows called Life, Documents, and Dignity. The letter asked if I would lead the first workshop. I read it twice before calling Mavis. They want me to teach people how to manage their papers. I said. She laughed. You've been doing that for free for half the town. It's about time someone noticed. At the first session, 8 women and 2 men showed up. Some carried folders stuffed with bills. Others only questions. We sat in a circle around the community center's folding tables. Start with what matters, I told them. The rest will find its order. A widow named Evelyn raised her hand. You make it sound peaceful. It can be, I said. Peace is mostly sorting what belongs to you from what doesn't. They nodded, writing it down like it was something worth keeping. By the end of the month, the workshops were full. The librarian started calling me Mrs. Hart, the calm one. I never corrected her. The name fit. Jonas stopped by one afternoon, carrying a brass plate wrapped in cloth. You mentioned needing a porch light, he said. Thought this might make it yours. He unwrapped it, and the words gleamed softly in the light. Built by boundaries. Kept by respect. It's beautiful, I whispered. He smiled. Seemed to fit. That evening, we installed the new light outside my little apartment. When it flicked on, the glow spilled across the wooden steps. Warm and deliberate. Inside, the phone rang once then stopped. I didn't check who it was. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the brass plaque catch the last of the day. For the first time, the light outside my door felt like it belonged to me alone. It was a Thursday when Marielle appeared at my door. No call. No warning, just the sound of cautious footsteps on the porch. I opened it halfway, and there she was. Smaller somehow, the hard edge around her shoulders gone. Hi, Mom. Her voice was low. She wasn't wearing the ring anymore. I stepped aside. You'd better come in before the wind decides for us. We sat outside instead. On the small porch bench Jonas had helped repair, between us, a mug of tea went cold. Marielle stared at the street, then at her hands. I didn't know where else to go. You found the right place, I said, though the words felt careful. Balanced, silence stretched. Then she spoke again, almost to herself. I was ashamed, she said, of how simple we lived. The house, the garden, the way you made everything last forever. I wanted something grand so badly that I started believing you were the reason I couldn't have it. I watched her face the same cheekbones as mine, the same way the mouth trembled before regret. Simple kept us alive. I said quietly, it bought your education, kept food on the table, paid for the shoes that made you run so far. Her eyes filled but didn't fall. I know, she whispered. We stayed that way a while, letting the wind move between us. When she stood, she smoothed her coat, gaze catching on the brass plaque above the door. She read it out loud. Built by boundaries, kept by respect. She looked at me then, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. You always did like words. They're easier to keep than promises, I said. She nodded, stepped off the porch, and didn't look back until she reached the gate. I waited until she disappeared down the street before I turned on the new porch lamp. The light spread softly across the steps, steady and gold. I watched it glow against the dark and felt something loosen inside me, something I no longer needed to name. Peace, it turns out, looks best on me. It turns out.